So there's a word that gets thrown around a lot in online performance circles. Probably the most common word I see posted in online groups on the topic, and that word is undercutting. Many people I've seen talking about it agree that it's a scourge, but why does it happen in the first place? And how can we stop it from happening? Believe it or not, the answer might lie with this year's Nobel Economics Prize winners. No, really. Drex here from DrexFactor Poi, sharing with you the love of poi spinning and flow arts to benefit your body and brain. And today, I'm going to explain one of the most confounding problems in the flow arts world with research so good, it actually won a Nobel Prize. But first up, I want to give a shout out to the friends of the channel. Big thanks to Dark Monk, Fire Mecca, Flowfests, Flow Toys, Pyroterra Light Toys, and Ultra Poi for helping to make the videos on this channel possible. You can learn more about all of these awesome companies and the work they're doing to support flow artists like yourself by checking out the links down in the description of this video. So, we're going to need a couple different pieces of background here. First up, the Sverige Prize in Economic Sciences in memory of Alfred Nobel, or just the Nobel Prize in Economics, is a yearly award given out to economists and social scientists whose research is judged to have made the most important contributions to our understanding of economics and the broader world. It's sometimes seen as a prize for the social sciences in general, being as how any research in psychology, sociology, or political science will likely trickle into economics at some point. And this year, the award was given to three different individuals: Joel Mokyr, Philippe Aghion, and Peter Howitt. We're going to forget about Joel because it's Philippe and Peter's research that's much more pertinent. Next, if you have asked any questions whatsoever about business in the flow arts, you have had that question answered by somebody who will talk about performance, because we have a lot of performers in the flow arts world, and I guarantee you it's not long before they start talking about undercutting. In brief, undercutting is the practice of lowering the price of one's goods or services to gain a competitive advantage in a given market. And in the context of the flow arts, it appears most frequently when performers new to a market price themselves under their competition, sometimes not charging for their services at all. Having a number of actors in a market that are all charging less for a given good or service creates downward pressure on the price of the good and service in general, and the veterans have to adjust their pricing to compensate. And it generates a pretty big stink because it drives the industry veterans in a given area absolutely bananas when they're trying to earn a stable living through performance. This, of course, is not the only context in which the word appears in the flow arts world. For years, undercutting was also a huge problem in the contact poi market when there was a glut of living room manufacturers setting up Etsy shops. And, of course, it's been a long-standing problem in the realm of instructor pay at fire and flow festivals, where eager flow artists will accept little or no pay for the opportunity to appear on a teaching lineup. Of course, lots of people think of that latter case as an example of a feature instead of a bug, including, to my great frustration, many performers who otherwise complain incessantly about undercutting in performance markets, but see undercutting in teaching lineups as a form of community building rather than opportunity loss for a professional class. Grumble. But that's a topic for another time. So why exactly does undercutting happen in the first place? To get the most obvious answer out of the way, a big part of it is that flow arts is overwhelmingly made up of people who are hobbyists looking to gain confidence or improve self-image, the vast majority of whom struggle to assign value to their services and fear rejection far more than they fear poverty. I have talked to a lot, and I do mean a lot, of up-and-coming performers who price themselves down not out of a deliberate strategy to tank the local performance market, but because they view themselves as so inexperienced as to be unable to charge the same amount as the seasoned professionals in the area. In essence, they say, I'm not as good as this other performer in my area, so I have to charge less. Of course, what they fail to realize is that by flooding the market with cheap or free options, they're changing the perception of value within that market. Potential clients may look at two different performers charging vastly different rates and wonder why the discrepancy in price when, on the surface, the services look very, very similar. It does also have to be said that many people simply want to be seen and share their spinning and lack a good outlet to do so. Given that the only opportunities to present their work in their area may be as a performer, it forces them to compete with the seasoned professionals in a way that neither party ultimately benefits from. It's been suggested many times that what's needed is ultimately something like a union or trade guild that sets standards of pay, safety, and conduct, while also providing mentorship to neophyte flow artists looking for entry into this particular world. Some of these efforts have gained limited traction, but ultimately tend to either fall apart in the long run or never get off the launch pad. See, many of us see playing with fire as not just an essential part of our art, but also a goal to be constantly striving for. Something that is so taboo and forbidden that in many municipalities, it's illegal unless performed under the right conditions. In other words, people who want to break rules and avoid oversight are kind of baked into the appeal of our art form from the get-go. Convincing them to join a professional organization kind of misses the point of the basic appeal of doing this in the first place for many. Personally, I also look at this tension between the pros and the neophytes, and can't help but notice that there might be an opportunity here. Namely, if there are so many people willing to either spin for free or pay for the privilege of doing so, a savvy young entrepreneur might just find an opportunity to charge new flow artists for the opportunity to show off their work, and charge an audience to view such an event and make money on both sides of the equation. But that too is likely a conversation for another time. And the reason for that is that there are solutions outlined in the research of Masters Aghian and Howitt, admit it, you totally forgot about them already, that I think could be helpful to us in addressing these questions. Because likely, without ever seeing a single flow artist perform, they already seem to understand the marketplace quite well. There's a great explainer on this year's Nobel Prize winners in economics that I'll link to down in the description, but there's a couple sections in particular that I want to highlight. Here they are.
What their models showed was that there was an inverted U-curve of economic innovation depending on how competitive the market was. If the market is just insanely cutthroat, with every company stealing every other company's designs and ideas and relentlessly undercutting one another all the time, that would be good for consumers for a little while. However, nobody would be willing to innovate because there would be no profit motive to do so.
Now, they weren't describing the flow arts world specifically, but I gotta admit it sounds pretty familiar. Right now, the flow arts market is one of those insanely cutthroat ones. People steal ideas from each other all the time, and there's so little money to be made overall that it hinders innovation. And, as the researchers found, it means a market that is good for consumers in the short term. The consumers, in this case, being the clientele for performances who are getting a great deal on that product right now. So, if Aghian and Howitt are able to describe a problem in the flow arts without seeing it directly, does that mean they can also see a solution? Well, maybe. Here's what they have to say about fixing these sorts of markets.
The solution to maximising innovation was to create economic policies that made a little bit of market dominance possible through protecting intellectual property, but also avoided too much dominance through trust busting and limiting how long IP would be protected for.
So it's here that things get a little sticky, because what exactly is the intellectual property in question? Is it a performance convention, a unique prop, or an act maybe? I've seen some performers who come up with really unique gimmicks that require a load of research and development, and that could conceivably give them an edge in a crowded performance market. And I've seen others create work that exists in a unique space as a narrative or structured performance that only they have the personnel and staging to present. The other challenge is that defending intellectual property is an expensive proposition. It's not a big deal for a big tech company, but for an individual performer struggling to make rent, hiring a lawyer to help them out is a daunting proposition. And of course, the words intellectual property will make a certain segment of the flow arts world very uncomfortable given the anti-corporate open source values that are frequently promoted within it. So, what do we do? The short answer is that I don't have a solution, but I do think it's helpful to use tools like this to identify both what the problems are and where they come from. Flow arts performance is a marketplace that is vulnerable to undercutting precisely because there is little, if any, intellectual property to protect there. Performers can seem largely undifferentiated to people looking to hire entertainers, and this discourages innovation because there simply isn't enough money to be made to justify investments of time and energy. Of course, many people will likely argue that the flow arts is innovating constantly, but I think they're viewing it through a lens that is intercommunal rather than intracommunal. That is, people come up with new tricks all the time, but those innovations make very little difference in booking gigs. So the challenge may be to find not only things that can be protected as a form of intellectual property, but also a mechanism by which that very thing can happen. And that is a whole challenge in and of itself. But who knows? Maybe you're up for the challenge. Well, that was a fun intellectual exercise. If you got anything out of this video, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe to help other people find it and to help my channel grow. This video would not have been possible without my amazing supporters on Patreon. In particular, I'd love to give a shout out to my Flow patrons who are up on screen right now. Thank you all so much for your very generous support. If you would like to get your name in the credits or access to a host of other rewards, you can sign up for my Patreon over at patreon.com/DrexFactorPoi. I'll leave a link down in the comments as well as up in the cards. Please help me out in my mission of bringing poi spinning and flow arts to the whole wide world. Thank you in advance. If you'd like to check out some other video essays I've done on the flow arts and economics, I'll link to a playlist of those videos down in the description as well as up on screen. Thanks so much for watching. Make sure to get out and flow today, and I'll see you with a new video real soon. Take care now. Peace.